The massive crystal dome of Vex Prime gleamed under the light of 3 suns. Inside, representatives from 47 different worlds sat in a circle that stretched for miles. Each alien species had their own section, their own strange chairs, and their own way of showing they thought this whole meeting was a waste of time. Captain Jake Murphy walked down the long pathway toward the center of the dome. His black military uniform looked plain and boring next to the colorful robes, shining armor, and weird biological suits worn by the aliens around him. Every step echoed in the huge space, and Jake could feel thousands of eyes watching him. He had trained for this moment for 2 years. Earth's first official request to join the Galactic Council. Everything depended on what happened in the next few hours. Ambassador Zektar stood up from his floating throne. The tall blue-skinned alien had 4 eyes that never seemed to blink at the same time. His voice boomed through the translation devices that hung in the air like glowing bubbles. "Welcome, human representative. We have reviewed your application to join our council. Please present your military capabilities for evaluation." Jake pressed a button on his wrist device. A hologram appeared in the center of the dome, showing a single spacecraft floating in the darkness of space. The ship was big and gray with lots of angles and weapon ports along its sides. "This is the UES Defiance," Jake said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Our primary military vessel." Silence filled the dome for exactly 3 seconds. Then the laughter started. It began with the Kethrans, who made sounds like musical bells ringing. The Mordians joined in with deep rumbling noises that shook the floor. Soon every species in the dome was making their own version of laughter, and the translation devices were working overtime to turn it all into sounds Jake could understand. Ambassador Krill slithered forward on her long, snake-like body. Her green scales caught the light as she moved, and when she spoke, her forked tongue flicked out between her words. "1 ship?" she hissed. "Your entire species sends 1 ship to show us your military power?" The laughter got louder. Jake watched as aliens pointed at the hologram with claws, tentacles, and appendages he didn't have names for. Some were wiping tears from their eyes. Others were slapping what he assumed were knees. "Perhaps," said a voice from the Serpentine section, "we should ask if this is a joke. Do humans have a sense of humor we don't understand?" More laughter. Jake felt his face getting hot, but he kept his expression calm. Behind him, the hologram slowly rotated, showing every angle of the Defiance. Compared to the sleek, beautiful ships he had seen in the Council's database, his ship looked like a flying toolbox. Zektar raised one of his 4 arms, and the laughter slowly died down. "Human representative, surely you have more ships than this. This must be a mistake in your data transmission." "No mistake," Jake replied. "The Defiance is our representative vessel for this trial." Another wave of chuckles rippled through the crowd. Jake heard whispered conversations in dozens of languages, all being translated into snippets he could catch. They must be very poor, probably can't afford more ships. Maybe they're not ready for space travel yet. Admiral Vorth of the Iron Legion stood up. His species looked like walking tanks made of metal and rock. When he spoke, his voice sounded like grinding gears. "Human, do you understand what membership in this council requires? We are not a social club. We are a military alliance. Our newest members must prove they can contribute to our defense forces." "I understand completely," Jake said. "Then you also understand," Vorth continued, "that proving your worth requires the trial of combat. Your military forces will face an existing member's fleet in battle. The winner joins the council. The loser." He made a grinding sound that the translator couldn't interpret, but Jake got the idea. "We accept the trial," Jake said without hesitation. This caused the biggest explosion of laughter yet. Even the usually serious Iron Legion made sounds that might have been chuckling. Jake watched as betting pools started forming in different sections of the dome. Aliens were trading glowing chips and making gestures that probably meant easy money. "Very well," Zektar said, wiping moisture from his lower eyes. "We will assign you an opponent. Let's see. The Mordian Collective has been looking for a training exercise for their new fleet commanders." Jake knew about the Mordian Collective. 800 ships. Each one bigger and more powerful than anything Earth had ever built. Their fleet had conquered 17 star systems in the last 50 years. "The trial will take place in 72 hours, Zektar announced. Standard combat rules apply. The battle continues until one side surrenders or is completely destroyed." "Understood," Jake said. As the official session ended, Jake found himself surrounded by aliens who wanted to get a closer look at the human, who was about to become a very expensive lesson in galactic politics. Most of them seemed friendly enough, in the way people are friendly to someone they're about to watch get crushed. A small, furry creature that looked like a cross between a rabbit and an octopus tugged on Jake's sleeve with one of its tentacles. "Human friend," it squeaked. "Perhaps you should reconsider. The Mordians are very good at space combat. Very, very good." "Thanks for the warning," Jake said. "It's not a warning," the creature replied sadly. "It's an obituary." As Jake walked back down the long pathway, the conversations around him continued. He heard odds being calculated, strategies being discussed, and funeral arrangements being planned. Everyone was very sure about how this was going to end. What they didn't know was that Jake wasn't worried about the odds. He had seen the Defiance in action during the secret test near Jupiter. He had watched the crew train for scenarios that would give most species nightmares. He knew things about human engineering and human determination that weren't in any galactic database. But mostly, he knew that when the galaxy laughed at humanity for sending just one ship, they were asking the wrong question. They should have been asking why humans thought one ship would be enough. Jake smiled as he reached his transport. In 72 hours, the galaxy was going to learn that sometimes one ship crewed by the right people could change everything. The laughter was about to stop. News traveled fast in the galaxy. Within hours of the council meeting, every major news network was running the same story. The headlines were all variations of the same theme. Humans challenge Mordian fleet with single ship, and shortest military trial in galactic history expected. On the betting world of Nexus Prime, the odds against humanity started at 50,000 to 1. By the end of the first day, they had climbed to 100,000 to 1. Most bookmakers stopped taking bets entirely, saying it would be like stealing money from their customers. The Mordian collective received the news with what passed for amusement among their species. Admiral Vex read the combat assignment while floating in his command tank, surrounded by the green fluid that kept his body alive in the vacuum of space. "One ship," he gurgled to his subordinates. "They send one ship against our entire Third Fleet." His officers made the clicking sounds that indicated agreement. The Third Fleet was 800 vessels strong. It had never lost a battle. Most enemies surrendered when they saw it coming. "Shall we send just a squadron, Admiral?" asked Commander Zexhar. "It seems wasteful to use the entire fleet." "No," Vexthul replied. "The Council wants a demonstration. We will give them one. Deploy all ships. Make this quick and clean." 3 light years away, the UES Defiance hung in empty space like a sleeping giant. The ship was bigger than most people realized, nearly 1.5 miles long with enough firepower to level a small moon. But size wasn't everything in space combat, and everyone in the galaxy knew it. Admiral Rex Collins stood on the bridge, reading the official notice of combat. Around him, his crew went about their duties with the calm efficiency that had made them the best of Earth's military. 800 people who had volunteered for what everyone thought would be a diplomatic mission. "Admiral," said Commander Lisa Hayes, walking up beside him, "the crew is asking questions. They want to know why we didn't bring backup." Rex looked out at the stars through the main view screen. Somewhere out there, 800 enemy ships were preparing to destroy them. "What did you tell them?" "That you'd explain when you were ready." Rex nodded and pressed the ship-wide communication button. His voice echoed through every deck, every room, every corridor of the massive vessel. "Attention, crew. As you know, we've been challenged to a trial by combat. We will face the Mordian Collective's Third Fleet in approximately 60 hours. I know some of you are wondering why Earth didn't send more ships. The answer is simple. This isn't about showing them our numbers. It's about showing them who we are." In the engine room, Chief Danny Wright paused his work on the gravity drive to listen. He had helped design half the systems on this ship, including some that weren't in any official manual. "The galaxy thinks we're weak because we only brought one ship," Rex continued. "They think we're fools for accepting this challenge. They're probably right about the second part, but they're dead wrong about the first." Lieutenant Amy Foster looked up from her navigation console. At 26, she was the youngest senior officer on the ship. She had joined the Space Force because she wanted to see the stars, not fight wars among them. "We're not here to prove we can build 1,000 ships," Rex said. "We're here to prove that one ship, crewed by humans who trust each other completely, can face any challenge the universe throws at us." In the medical bay, Dr. Paul Grant continued preparing for the casualties that everyone expected. He had enough supplies to treat the entire crew twice over, but he hoped he wouldn't need to use them. "I won't lie to you," Rex admitted. "The odds are bad. 800 ships against one. Any sane military commander would call this suicide. But we're not any military. We're human." The bridge crew exchanged glances. They had all seen the intelligence reports on Mordian tactics. Overwhelming force applied with precision timing. No mercy, no quarter given. It was a strategy that had conquered star systems. "Spend the next 60 hours however you want," Rex concluded. "Rest, train, call home, play cards. Just remember that when the shooting starts, we're all counting on each other. That's how humans fight. That's how we win." The communication ended and the ship returned to its normal sounds of humming engines and working machinery. But something had changed in the atmosphere. The crew moved differently, spoke differently. They began preparing not just their equipment, but their minds. In Recreation Room B, a group of Marines started an all-night poker game. Money and personal items changed hands as they told stories about home, about family, about everything except the battle ahead. The pilot squadron gathered in the hangar bay to practice formations they might never use. The Defiance carried 30 small fighters, barely enough to be called a squadron by galactic standards. But each pilot was among the best Earth had ever trained. Chief Wright spent his time making final adjustments to systems that were already running perfectly. The gravity manipulation drive that could move the ship instantly across vast distances. The matter conversion weapons that turned space dust into devastating projectiles. The adaptive shielding that learned from each attack and grew stronger. But the real secret wasn't in the technology. It was in the crew. Lieutenant Ben Carter reviewed tactical data in his quarters, memorizing every detail about Mordian ships and fighting patterns. He had been studying alien military doctrine since he was a teenager, and he knew their strengths and weaknesses better than most of their own commanders. Dr. Grant walked through the ship, checking on crew members who were having trouble sleeping. He found some in the observation lounges, staring out at the stars. Others in the gym, working out their nervous energy. A few in the ship's small chapel, praying to whatever gods they believed in. "Doc," called Petty Officer Mike Stone from the weight room. "You really think we can do this?" Grant paused his rounds. "I think," he said carefully, "that if any group of humans can do the impossible, it's this crew. That's not really an answer. It's the only answer I have." Meanwhile, across the galaxy, military analysts were having heated discussions about human technology and tactics. Most concluded that while the human ship appeared formidable, it was simply outclassed by the numbers it would face. A few observers noted some unusual features in the ship's design. Energy signatures that didn't match known propulsion systems, weapon ports that seemed too large for conventional armaments, shielding that appeared to use principles no one fully understood. But even these analysts agreed on one thing. No single ship, no matter how advanced, could survive against an entire fleet. It was a mathematical impossibility. On the third day, as the time for battle approached, Admiral Collins called his senior staff to the briefing room. They gathered around the holographic display showing the trial site, an empty region of space between two dead stars. "Final thoughts?" Rex asked. "The Mordians will try to surround us," Lisa said. "Standard envelopment tactic. Hit us from all sides at once. Let them come," Danny added. "Our systems are designed for exactly this kind of fight." Amy studied the star charts. "If we can maintain mobility, we might be able to avoid getting trapped." "And if we can't?" Ben asked. Rex smiled grimly. "Then we remind the galaxy why humans don't know how to quit." As the Defiance moved toward the trial site, every sensor in the galaxy focused on the coming battle. Spectator ships from dozens of species positioned themselves at safe distances. This would be the most watched military engagement in recent history. The betting had stopped entirely. Everyone knew how this would end, everyone except the humans. The trial site sat in the void between two dead stars where space was empty and black and perfect for watching things die. Spectator ships from across the galaxy had positioned themselves in a rough circle around the area. Their sensors and cameras pointed toward the center like eyes watching a gladiator arena. Admiral Vex arrived first with the Mordian Collective's Third Fleet. 800 ships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their dark hulls gleaming under the distant starlight. The vessels moved like a school of predatory fish, sleek and deadly and completely coordinated. Each ship was a masterpiece of military engineering. Plasma cannons lined their hulls like glowing eyes. Shield generators hummed with power that could deflect small asteroids. Engine systems that could accelerate the vessels to incredible speeds in seconds. The fleet spread out into attack formation, a three-dimensional web designed to trap and destroy anything foolish enough to enter their killing zone. It was a sight that had made entire star systems surrender without firing a shot. On the command ship, Admiral Vex floated in his tank and reviewed the tactical display. Red dots showed his ships positioned perfectly around the trial area. At the center, a single blue dot marked where the human ship would appear. "All ships report ready," announced Commander Zexhar. "Weapon systems armed, shields at maximum power." "Excellent," Vexthul gurgled. "When the human arrives, we will end this quickly. The galaxy is watching, and we must show them why the Mordian Collective is feared across known space." The spectator ships maintained their distance, sensors recording every detail. This battle would be studied in military academies for generations, though everyone expected it to be a very short lesson about the importance of bringing enough firepower. Ambassador Zektar watched from his luxury cruiser, surrounded by council members from a dozen different species. They had come to witness humanity's official entry into galactic civilization, one way or another. "Perhaps," suggested Ambassador Krill, coiling her snake-like body around her viewing chair, "we should have assigned them a smaller opponent. This feels like using a war fleet to swat an insect." "The human accepted the challenge," Zektar replied. "They knew what they were facing. If they chose to proceed anyway, that speaks to either great courage or great stupidity." "I'm betting on stupidity," muttered Admiral Vorth from his metal throne. Then the Defiance dropped out of hyperspace. Even the spectators fell silent for a moment. The human ship was bigger than most had expected. 1.5 kilometers of angular, aggressive architecture that looked like it had been designed by someone who understood that space combat was not about looking pretty. But still, it was one ship against 800. "Attention, human vessel," Admiral Vexthul transmitted on all frequencies. "This is your final opportunity to surrender. Your crew need not die for the pride of your species." The response came back immediately, Admiral Collins's voice clear and calm across the void. "Negative, Mordian fleet. We didn't come here to surrender." On the bridge of the Defiance, Rex looked around at his crew. They sat at their stations with the focused calm of professionals who had trained their entire lives for this moment. No panic, no fear, just quiet determination. "All stations report ready." "Admiral," Lisa announced from her position beside the captain's chair. "Weapons armed and locked," Ben added from tactical. "Engineering systems optimal," Danny called from his station. "All our special toys are online and ready to play." "Navigation standing by," Amy reported. "We can move anywhere you want us to go." Rex nodded and settled into his command chair. Through the main view screen, he could see the Mordian formation spreading out like a deadly flower blooming in space. Each ship was a killing machine, and there were 800 of them. "Helm, take us to the center of their formation," he ordered. Amy's hands moved over her controls and the Defiance began moving forward. The massive ship accelerated smoothly, heading directly toward the heart of the enemy fleet. "Sir," Ben said, studying his tactical display, "they're surrounding us. Classic envelopment pattern. In 30 seconds we'll be trapped in the center with nowhere to run." "Good," Rex replied. "That's exactly where we want to be." The Mordian ships moved into their final positions. 800 vessels arranged in a perfect sphere, with a single human ship at the center. Every weapon in the fleet was aimed at the Defiance. Every sensor was locked on target. Admiral Vexthul allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The humans had made this easy by flying directly into his trap. Now he could end this embarrassing display with a single coordinated strike. "All ships," he commanded, "prepare to fire on my mark. Full power, all weapons. I want nothing left of that ship except scrap metal." 800 ship commanders acknowledged the order. Thousands of weapons charged to maximum power. The very space around the trial site began to glow with accumulated energy. "This is it," Rex said quietly to his crew. "Remember your training. Trust your equipment, trust each other, and show the galaxy what humans can do when we put our minds to it." He looked at the tactical display one more time. 800 red dots surrounding one blue dot. Impossible odds by any reasonable calculation. All batteries, he commanded. Fire. What happened next would be discussed in military academies across the galaxy. For the next 1,000 years, the Defiance unleashed hell. Instead of the elegant energy beams favored by most galactic civilizations, the human ship fired something that could only be described as controlled nuclear fury. Kinetic projectiles accelerated to significant fractions of light speed tore through space like invisible hammers of the gods. The first salvo caught the Mordians completely off guard. 20 ships simply ceased to exist, torn apart by impacts that released more energy than some stars, produced in a year. But the real shock came when the Mordians fired back 800. Ships poured everything they had into the space, where the Defiance hung motionless. Plasma beams, particle cannons, fusion torpedoes, exotic energy weapons that could crack planets, all of it focused on a single target. The explosion lit up half the star system. When the sensors cleared, the spectator ships expected to see nothing but an expanding cloud of debris. Instead, they saw the Defiance hanging in space exactly where it had been, completely undamaged. Impossible, whispered Ambassador Zektar. How are their shields holding? Demanded Admiral Vorth. But the humans weren't done with surprises. As the Mordian fleet tried to process what they had just seen, the Defiance simply disappeared. Not jumped to hyperspace. Not moved behind cover. Just vanished from normal space-time as if it had never existed. Then it reappeared 3 kilometers away, behind a group of Mordian destroyers. The human ship's weapons fired again, and 15 more enemy vessels died before they could even turn around. What in the void is happening? Vexthul demanded, his calm finally cracking. How can they move like that? His sensor operators had no answers. The human ship was violating every known law of physics. It didn't accelerate, it just appeared in new locations. It didn't turn. It simply reoriented itself to face new targets. And everywhere it went, Mordian ships died. All units, Vexthul commanded, concentrate fire on the human vessel, predict its movement patterns and fire it where it's going to be. But the Defiance didn't have movement patterns. It fought like something alive, something angry, something that had decided the laws of physics were more like suggestions. Chief Wright grinned as he monitored the ship's revolutionary systems from the engine room. The gravity manipulation drive that folded spacetime around the ship. The matter conversion weapons that turned cosmic dust into devastating projectiles. The adaptive shielding that analyzed each attack and learned how to deflect it. How are we doing up there? He called to the bridge. We're getting their attention, Rex replied, watching as the Mordian formation tried to adapt to fighting an enemy that refused to follow any known rules of engagement. The Defiance moved through space like a dancer, appearing and disappearing, striking and vanishing, turning the Mordian fleet's strength against itself. When enemies tried to surround it, it used their own crossfire to destroy their ships. When they spread out to avoid friendly fire, it picked them off in small groups. By the end of the first hour, 200 Mordian ships were gone. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as everything they thought they knew about space. Combat was rewritten by 800 humans who refused to accept that they were supposed to lose. The second hour of battle began with Admiral Vexthul screaming orders that made no sense, and his fleet trying to fight an enemy that shouldn't exist. Half his ships were gone. Just gone. Turned into expanding clouds of superheated gas and twisted metal. The humans had done in 60 minutes what most military analysts said was impossible for any single vessel to accomplish. Reform the battle line, Vexthul commanded, his voice cracking through the ship-to-ship communications. Establish overlapping fields of fire. They can't be everywhere at once. But the Defiance seemed determined to prove him wrong. The human ship materialized directly in the center of a Mordian squadron, its weapons already firing. 6 destroyers died before they knew the enemy was among them. By the time the surviving ships turned to engage, the Defiance had vanished again, reappearing behind a group of cruisers on the far side of the formation. Commander Zexhar stared at his tactical display in growing horror. The red dots representing his fleet were disappearing faster than his computers could update the battle map. Admiral, we need to retreat, regroup, study their tactics and develop countermeasures. No, Vexthul snarled. We are the Mordian Collective. We have conquered 17 star systems. We do not retreat from a single ship. On the spectator platforms, the mood had shifted from amusement to shock to something approaching terror. The impossible was happening before their eyes, and no one could explain it. "How many ships have they destroyed?" Ambassador Krill asked, her serpentine body coiled tight with stress. "Over 400, replied her aide, checking the latest sensor data. "More than half the Mordian fleet." "With one ship?" "With one ship." Admiral Vorth was silent, his metal form locked in place as he processed what he was witnessing. The Iron Legion prided itself on military efficiency, but this was beyond anything in their tactical manuals. Meanwhile, aboard the Defiance, the crew worked with the smooth coordination of a machine made of living parts. Each person knew their job, knew their shipmates, and knew that failure meant death for everyone they cared about. "Enemy squadron moving to intercept," Ben reported from tactical. 12 heavy cruisers approaching from our starboard side. "Amy, put us right in the middle of them," Rex ordered. "With pleasure, sir." The Defiance blinked out of existence and reappeared surrounded by Mordian cruisers. But instead of opening fire immediately, Rex tried something different. "Lisa, launch fighters." The hangar bay doors opened, and 30 small craft poured out like angry hornets. Each fighter was piloted by someone who had trained for this exact scenario, who knew their ship and their weapons better than they knew their own heartbeat. Lieutenant Sarah Kim led the squadron in a tight formation around the cruisers. "Phoenix Squadron, engage at will. Let's show them how Earth pilots fly." The fighters moved like extensions of their pilots' minds, dodging between the massive enemy ships and striking at weak points with surgical precision. They weren't trying to destroy the cruisers. That was the Defiance's job. They were creating chaos, forcing the enemy to divide their attention. Chief Wright monitored the ship's systems from engineering, watching power levels and system efficiency, with the eye of someone who had helped design every component. "Danny to bridge, we're running hot but stable." All systems green across the board. "How long can we maintain this pace?" Rex asked. "As long as you need us to, Admiral. These engines were built to run forever." Dr. Grant moved through the ship's medical bay, treating the few crew members who had been injured when enemy fire penetrated their shields. Burns, concussions, broken bones, the price of pushing their luck in a battle no sane person would fight. "How are we doing, Doc?" asked Petty Officer Stone, nursing a dislocated shoulder. "We're winning," Grant replied, administering a pain medication. "I don't know how, but we're winning." "Damn right we are." The battle raged on. The Defiance moved through the Mordian formation like a shark among minnows, striking and vanishing, appearing where least expected and hitting where it would hurt most. Each attack was precisely calculated, each movement planned 3 steps ahead. But the crew wasn't just following orders. They were improvising, adapting, solving problems that had never existed before. When Amy's navigation system started overheating from constant spatial jumps, she rerouted power from non-essential systems without being asked. When Ben's targeting computer couldn't keep up with their unconventional tactics, he switched to manual control and trusted his own instincts. "Admiral," Lisa called out, "the Mordians are trying something new. They're forming up into smaller groups trying to coordinate their attacks." Rex studied the tactical display. The remaining Mordian ships, maybe 300 now, were clustering into tight formations of 20 or 30 vessels each. It was a smart adaptation, designed to maximize their firepower while minimizing the chance of friendly fire. "They're learning," he admitted. "Good for them. Amy, take us to the edge of the battle zone, sir." "Trust me." The Defiance appeared at the far edge of the trial site, seemingly retreating from the enemy formation. For a moment, the Mordian commanders allowed themselves to hope that the humans were finally running away. Then the human ship turned around and charged. Not jumped, not teleported, not used their mysterious space-folding technology, just accelerated to incredible speed and flew directly at the center of the Mordian formation like a missile the size of a city block. "All weapons, continuous fire," Rex commanded. "Don't stop shooting until we're through them." What followed was the most intense 30 seconds of space combat anyone had ever witnessed. The Defiance plowed through the enemy formation like a battering ram made of pure destruction, its weapons firing in all directions. Ships exploded around it in brilliant flashes of light. Debris bounced off its shields like rain. When the ship emerged on the other side of the formation, another 50 Mordian vessels were gone. Admiral Vexthal floated in his command tank, watching his fleet die piece by piece. His tactical officers had stopped giving him updates because there was nothing left to update. Ship after ship simply vanished from the battle display, erased by weapons and tactics he couldn't understand. "Admiral," Commander Zexhar said quietly, "we have less than 200 ships left. Perhaps it's time to consider—" "Never!" Vexthul roared. "Signal all remaining ships. Ramming speed. If we can't outfight them, we'll crush them with mass." It was the last desperate move of a commander who had run out of options. Every surviving Mordian ship turned toward the Defiance and accelerated to maximum speed. If they couldn't win with weapons, they would win by turning themselves into guided missiles. Rex watched them coming on the tactical display. 200 ships, all aimed directly at his vessel, all moving fast enough to turn both sides into expanding gas clouds. "Well," he said calmly. "That's new." "Orders, sir?" Lisa asked. Rex looked around at his crew. These people who had followed him into an impossible battle and somehow made it possible. These humans who refused to quit even when the universe itself seemed to be against them. "Danny, give me everything the engines have," he ordered. "Amy, plot a course through the center of their formation." "Ben, target their command ship." "Sir, if we stay on this course, they'll ram us," Amy warned. "No," Rex replied with complete confidence. "They won't." The Defiance accelerated toward the oncoming Mordian fleet. Two forces rushing toward each other at combined speeds that would have impressed a physicist and terrified a mathematician. At the last possible second, the human ship simply stepped sideways through folded space, appearing beside the Mordian command vessel. Rex looked directly at Admiral Vexthul through the view screen and nodded once, a gesture of respect from one military commander to another. Then the Defiance's weapon spoke for the final time. When the firing stopped, only one ship remained intact in the trial zone. The UES Defiance hung motionless in space, surrounded by the wreckage of what had once been the most feared fleet in the local sector. The silence across the spectator platforms was complete. No one spoke. No one moved. No one seemed to breathe. 800 humans had just rewritten everything the galaxy thought it knew about warfare. The silence stretched across space like a held breath. Every sensor, every camera, every recording device in the galaxy focused on the trial site, where impossible had just become reality. The UES Defiance hung motionless among the wreckage of 800 Mordian ships. Pieces of destroyed vessels drifted past its hull like metallic snow, catching the distant starlight in brief, brilliant flashes. The human ship bore scars from the battle, burn marks on its armor, a few sections where shields had failed and enemy fire had found its mark. But it was intact, functional and victorious. Ambassador Zektar was the first to find his voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. "This is impossible. No single ship can defeat an entire fleet. The mathematics alone—" "The mathematics," interrupted Admiral Vorth in his grinding mechanical voice, "apparently need revision. On the Council observation ship, dozens of alien species stared at their displays in stunned silence. The betting pools had crashed. Military analysts were frantically checking their sensors for malfunction. Emergency sessions were being called on every civilized world. Captain Jake Murphy stood in the council chamber aboard the observation platform, watching the reaction of beings who had laughed at humanity just days before. No one was laughing now. Several species representatives were openly panicking, frantically calculating how this impossible victory might affect the galactic balance of power. "Captain Murphy," Ambassador Krill said, her serpentine form coiled tight with stress, "we demand an explanation. What technology allows a single ship to defeat our most powerful fleet?" Jake looked around the chamber at faces that showed fear, confusion, and something that might have been respect. "You're asking the wrong question, Ambassador. It's not about the technology." "Then what?" Zektar demanded, his four eyes all focused on the human representative. "What could possibly explain what we just witnessed?" Before Jake could answer, a communication request came through from the Defiance. Admiral Collins' voice filled the chamber, calm and professional despite having just accomplished the impossible. "Council representatives, this is Admiral Rex Collins aboard the UES Defiance. Our ship and crew are intact. We're prepared to continue if any other fleet wishes to challenge humanity's application for membership." The offer hung in the air like a live explosive device. 800 ships had just been destroyed by a single human vessel, and the Admiral was calmly asking if anyone else wanted to try their luck. No one volunteered. "Admiral Collins," Zektar said carefully, "on behalf of the Galactic Council, I congratulate you on your—" unexpected victory. Perhaps you could enlighten us about your ship's capabilities. Rex's voice came back steady and sure. Our ship represents the best of human engineering, Ambassador. Gravity manipulation systems that allow us to fold space around our vessel. Matter conversion weapons that turn cosmic dust into kinetic projectiles. Adaptive shielding that learns from each attack and becomes stronger. But surely, interrupted Admiral Vorth, technology alone cannot account for such a decisive victory. The Mordian Collective was not composed of fools. They adapted their tactics, showed tactical flexibility. You're right, Rex agreed. Technology wasn't the deciding factor. The crew was. Jake stepped forward in the council chamber. That's what I was trying to tell you, ambassadors. You wanted to know what humanity brings to the galaxy. We bring the refusal to accept defeat. We bring people who trust each other completely, who adapt to any situation, who keep fighting when any rational species would surrender. He gestured toward the display showing the battle aftermath. You saw our ship fold space and time. You saw weapons that turn matter itself into ammunition. But the real secret was 800 humans who looked at impossible odds and decided to win anyway. In the medical bay of the Defiance, Dr. Grant was treating the last of the injured crew members. Surprisingly, there weren't many. Burns from energy feedback, a few broken bones from impact shock, some cuts from flying debris. For a battle that had rewritten galactic military doctrine, the casualties were remarkably light. Doc, asked Petty Officer Stone, flexing his freshly healed shoulder. Did we really just beat 800 ships? We did. With one ship? With one ship crewed by the right people. Stone grinned and shook his head. Wait until I tell my kids about this. On the bridge, the senior staff was running post-battle diagnostics. Chief Wright reported that all systems were functioning within normal parameters, despite the incredible stresses they had endured. Amy confirmed that the navigation systems had performed flawlessly through hundreds of spatial jumps. Ben noted that weapons efficiency had actually improved during the battle, as the targeting computers learned from each engagement. Damage report? Rex asked. Minimal, Lisa replied. Hull breaches on decks 7 and 12 already sealed. Shield generators operating at 93% efficiency. We could fight another battle right now if we had to. Let's hope we don't have to. But Rex knew they probably would. News of this victory would spread across the galaxy in hours. Every military power would want to know how humans had accomplished the impossible. Some would want to study their technology. Others would want to steal it. A few might decide that humanity was too dangerous to be allowed to exist. In the council chamber, the formal voting had begun. One by one, each species cast their decision on humanity's application for membership. The results were unanimous in a way that no council vote had ever been before. By unanimous consent, Ambassador Zektar announced, his voice still shaky, humanity is accepted into the Galactic Council with full military honors and all associated privileges. Jake nodded formally. On behalf of Earth and all humanity, I accept. There is, however, Zektar continued, one additional matter. The Council would like to know, how many ships does Earth actually possess? Jake smiled. It was the first time he had smiled since arriving at Vex Prime. That's classified information, Ambassador. But I can tell you that the Defiance represents our current military philosophy quite well, which is quality over quantity. We'd rather have one ship crewed by people who refuse to lose than 1,000 ships crewed by people who are just following orders. As the formal session ended, representatives from dozens of species approached Jake with requests for trade agreements, technology exchanges, and military alliances. The species that had laughed at humanity's single ship now wanted to be their best friends. But the real change wasn't in the politics or the economics. It was in the way aliens looked at humans. The amusement was gone, replaced by something between respect and wariness. Humanity had announced their arrival on the galactic stage in the loudest way possible. 3 months later, when the Zerathi Hive launched their invasion of the Outer Rim colonies, every species in the galaxy sent the same desperate message to Earth. Please help. The response came from Admiral Collins aboard the newly commissioned UES Defiance II. On our way, the galaxy held its breath, wondering how many ships humanity would send this time. Surely they would bring a fleet to face the Zerathi swarm. When 2 ships dropped out of hyperspace at the battle zone, several alien commanders actually laughed with relief. Just 2 ships against 1,000-vessel hive fleet? The humans had finally bitten off more than they could chew. The laughter stopped when the UES Defiance II and her sister ship, UES Resolution, opened fire. The Zarathi hive lasted 47 minutes. After that, no one in the galaxy questioned human military capabilities. When Earth announced they were building a third ship, several minor wars ended immediately as species decided they had better things to do than potentially anger the humans. But the real legacy of that first battle wasn't fear or respect or even the revolutionary technology that had made it possible. It was the lesson that the galaxy learned about humanity itself. Humans didn't win because they had better ships or superior weapons. They won because when told something was impossible, they asked, "Says who?" When faced with overwhelming odds, they shrugged and got to work. When the universe itself seemed stacked against them, they decided the universe needed an attitude adjustment. The galaxy had laughed at humanity's single ship because they thought it showed weakness, poverty, or inexperience. They never considered that it might show confidence. The kind of confidence that comes from knowing your people so well, trusting your crew so completely, that you're willing to bet everything on 800 humans who refuse to quit. Years later, when military historians studied the Battle of Vex Prime, they would identify dozens of factors that contributed to humanity's victory: advanced technology, superior tactics, innovative strategy, adaptive thinking. But the veterans who fought that battle knew the real answer was simpler. They won because they were human, and humans don't know how to lose.